and science, measurements are related in very specific ways. For example, the circumference of a circle is always 2 pi times the radius, 2 pi r. We can say that the circumference has a direct variation or is directly proportional to the radius. So what does that even mean? Always gotta find those typos, right? The circumference is directly proportional to the radius. I put this blue arrow here on purpose. It goes straight across. That means as the radius gets bigger, so as this gets bigger, the circumference gets bigger as well, right? So as the radius gets bigger, the circumference gets bigger. That's called a direct variation, or they are directly proportional. And you could say that they are related directly, right? As one goes up, the other goes up. As one goes down, the other goes down. So if this radius were to get smaller, then the circumference would also get smaller. Okay, so let's look at different types of variation. The first one we're going to talk about is called direct variation or directly proportional. In a direct proportion, you use this formula. Y is directly proportional to x. So this little k right here is called your constant of variation. You don't know what this is. Like up here, our 2 pi is pretty constant, right? It's 2 times pi. That's an actual number. So in this example, 2 pi is our k. It's some constant that relates the y and the k together. I know that's very generic, but bear with me, it's really not that bad. For direct variation, when the value of x goes up, so does y. When x goes down, so does y. So as one variable goes up, the other one goes up. And as one goes down, the other one goes down. An example of this would be if 10 apples cost $5, how much would 25 apples cost? Well, if you buy more apples, don't you have to pay more money? That's pretty much what direct proportion means. And yes, there is more than one correct way to work this problem or these types of problems. This is just the process that we're going to learn in this section. If you know of a better way, I'm okay with you doing that. But keep in mind, on a test, you may be asked for very specific things like, what is k? What is your constant of variation? And if you use a different method, you might not know that answer. So let's look at the first example. Y varies directly as x. That means you can automatically set up your equation, y varies directly as x. That's what we had on that previous page. But then they say, y is 45 when x is 5. Find y when x is 13. So how in the world do we work this problem? We want to solve our formula for k. So we know these two things go together, right? Y is 45 when x is 5. So we have 45 equals k times 5. Well, let's solve for k. We have to divide both sides by 5, so k is equal to 9. We just solved for k. We want to rewrite the formula, filling in only the k. So that means y is equal to 9x. All I did was put a 9 where the k is. So now that we know our generic formula, we want to find y when x is 13. Well, y is equal to 9 times x, and x is 13. Well, 9 times 13 is 117. So when x is 13, y is 117. Okay, how about this example? The volume of blood B in a person's body varies directly as body weight, W. A person who weighs 160 pounds has approximately 5 quarts of blood. Estimate the number of quarts of blood in a person who weighs 200 pounds. We work this exactly the same way. It tells us that this information varies directly. But this time, instead of X's and Y's, we have B's and W's. Notice up here it says Y varies directly as X. And we use this formula, Y equals KX. This says B varies directly as W. So B varies directly as W. We also know that a person who weighs 160 pounds has about 5 quarts of blood. So these two numbers go together, right? So let's use these two numbers to find K. So 160 pounds is W and 5 quarts is the amount of blood. So we have 5 is equal to K times 160. Solve for K. So we get K is equal to this number, 0.03125. Normally you want to use fractions. We'll see what happens with this problem though. So in the next part of the problem, we know that the new person weighs 200 pounds. So that's going to be our W. We want to know how many quarts of blood that person might have. So B is equal to K times W. So we get 6.25. So what does that mean? Now this is an application problem, so you definitely want to include your units. We're looking for B, and B is the volume of blood. So a person who weighs 200 pounds has approximately 6.25 quarts of blood.